Southland, Monday, January 5th. Mr. Grant, Mr. Purdy, it has been a very, very fun weekend for baseball regionals. It's been a great weekend for the softball College World Series. Which games have you enjoyed the most, Mr. Grant, out of all of these stickball appearances?
You know where I'm going with this. I gotta say, nothing brings me greater joy than seeing Auburn lose postseason baseball games in this sport. Simply because I am yet to get over 2019. Maybe it is my own personal shortcomings that I can't get over this, but seeing them go 0-2 when they were the 20th best team in the country, and only got to host because they had the right votes in the right places, leading the board. Leading the committee, the committee. Would hate to disparage the committee and call them the wrong thing. But yeah, those have been fun games. But in all seriousness, there's been a lot of great games all over the place. As a Missouri Valley truther, seeing Indiana State hold serve in their regional, that's been fun too. And the Hoosiers are playing right now. So, even though the Grant adjacent teams, Georgia Tech and Louisville, the baseball traditional powers, are not in the postseason, for some reason Indiana is, and that's fun too. So
important to note, the Indiana State baseball team will not be hosting that super. Their entire athletic department staff is helping out with the Indiana Special Olympics. So despite being a regional host, they will instead be going to Fort Worth to play TCU.
Oh man.
That's pretty tough, actually, because they're the seeded team. I mean,
yeah,
great for Indiana State and volunteering at a tremendous cause, but man, that's brutal. That they gave up the home field advantage.
Oh my god, just hire the Tiger staff. They just are they on the road that weekend? Go play in Comerica. Like, this seems doable.
Indiana State.
Yeah, hold on. Indiana State.
Terre Haute is
no.
You might as well drive to Bush.
You're right. Yeah, there's a lot of areas.
Southern Miss, and it's
this would make sense if people closer to Comerica Park.
No, it's not.
No. This would make sense if the listeners had context of the conversation we were having before, in which we talked about the original history of Southern Miss baseball for some reason. In which their first game was a 24-2 loss to the Detroit Tigers. But now we're getting far off topic. And I'm contractually obligated to rein it in.
Shall I answer the question that you asked initially?
Yes, please. What did you enjoy from this weekend of stickball?
I had a friend who was covering the Clemson-Tennessee game that went to 14 innings on Saturday, so I tuned in partly just to hope that his night would end sooner rather than later. And then, how much softball did I watch? I've watched more softball than baseball. Honestly, the baseball, for whatever reason, has not been enticing to me enough to watch it when I know that there's some really damn good softball on. Stanford, Oklahoma today was really fun, actually. There are some clutch plays there that saved Oklahoma a couple times and saved Stanford a couple times. But
see, that's why I can't do the Women's College World Series this year. It's just like Oklahoma's too good. I saw them.
I mean, yes, they're good, but they were tied halfway through their game. Like they're playing tight games still. They're still playing tight games.
Tied like 4 times this whole year.
After Stanford scored, Stanford at least scored. It wasn't a pitcher.
I saw them smoke Louisville earlier in the year because I watch a lot of Louisville softball, and I was like, you know what? I'm a little over this Oklahoma team. And
they nearly lost in their regional. Like they nearly lost in their super. Yeah. Like they've lost. But they didn't. That's what makes the story even better is that they're getting close. They're on the verge. It's not like they're just blowing teams out every game, taking that literally.
It's a beatable Oklahoma team. Yes, they've won 51 games or whatever in a row, but it's like it's a much weaker Oklahoma team than we've seen in years past, and that's including last year when they lost like multiple games that season.
Yeah.
But that team, once they got into the championship phase, like Dabo always likes to say, like they were completely on fire, completely unbeatable.
Yeah.
It was really, really absurd. Personally, I would have preferred Oklahoma to lose, but that is personal bias seeping into our good sports media. So Oklahoma will probably advance to the championship final, I assume, with today's win.
Yep.
And then Florida State, Tennessee is coming up. It's on live right now.
Okay.
On ESPN.
All right.
So that will decide the other place, I assume. So it's probably going to be Oklahoma, Florida State for like the 80th time. I don't know.
Who'd have thunk it?
And I will sigh. You cry. I don't know.
Shall we get on with the major topic du jour, gentlemen?
Although let's mention Carol Lee first.
Go for it.
Yes. She. What was it? Yesterday. No, today. Yeah. Today being Monday, she became an All-American for the second time by the ITA and singles, not doubles. So pretty good. She was 29-12 this year. So that's a very in singles specifically. So well deserved there, and adding another one to the list of All-Americans. Not many spring All-Americans so far, but also a lot of seasons still. There's still baseball technically still be played out, I guess.
The other news note that I had, volleyball has been announced as part of the Road to Tampa. That's 2, as in the numeral 2. Tampa Invitational, assumedly in Tampa. There was some discussion in our writer's room about why Tech is playing USF. Mr. Grant, would you care to explain?
Well, see, how do I put this? Michele Collier is the greatest player in the history of USF volleyball. So it would be very silly for us to go to their home tournament and not, play them. I'm sure that's good for tickets to get their GOAT back in the bill. It'd be like if down the line, Julia Bergmann was coaching some team and came to Georgia Tech to play a game. You'd expect them to play Julia against Georgia Tech. Not that may ever happen. And, hopefully she's on our sideline someday, but you get the idea.
It makes sense. It makes sense. We'll actually be talking about Julia Bergmann and Carol Lee a lot in our topic du jour, this season's end of season awards for From the Rumble Seat. We put together a couple categories. We did some voting amongst the staff and amongst some other Georgia Tech media to put these together. But I think, Jack, you're still working on that bigger article.
Correct.
These are just our picks for the categories that we put together. I do have to acknowledge before we get started that there are 2 athletes still in contention for national titles, Zach Jaeger and Jamir Gibson of track and field. Though the track and field season technically is not over. East preliminaries were last week. The full NCAA track and field meet is soon.
This weekend.
I don't have a
this weekend in Austin.
Well, there you go. But with that being said, let's get started at the top of the list with your team of the year. Mr. Grant, you are up first.
I mean, I think this one's pretty obvious. We'll definitely recap the rest of last week's accolades a little later. Do you want me to read off our candidates that we've listed first? Or
yeah,
no?
Let's list the candidates first. Let's set some drama.
Yeah, let me go ahead and list the candidates, because I clearly have hosted an award show before and I know how to do this. Your candidates are Georgia Tech men's golf, Georgia Tech women's volleyball, and Georgia Tech women's tennis. Mr. Grant, you are up first.
I don't think this one's particularly close. It's Georgia Tech golf. They just turned in the best team season since the women's tennis team won it all in our only NCAA official national championship. I think that speaks for itself. It's not a lifetime achievement award. It is they were the best. They are the best. They'll maybe be the best next year. I mean, the accolades speak for themselves. When we're spoiler alert a little bit for some of the stuff we'll talk about a little bit later, at least in my own nominations. Georgia Tech golf is up and down this list for good reason.
Yeah, when we planned this, we probably should have put the golf recap first. Anyway,
yeah,
food for thought for later. This one was easy for me. I picked golf. You said most of what I wanted to say too. They're the most consistent championship contending program on campus. That is it says it all right there. Mr. Purdy.
Yeah, it's golf. I mean, I would put volleyball, women's tennis in there because they've comprehensively had good years as well. And I think it would have been, if this was a functioning award show that with like trophies and all that kind of stuff, you'd have to throw them up there just for the sake of the drama and pomp and everything. But I do think volleyball, they've shown the consistency that golf has shown the last couple. Like they've equally been on very positive upward tracks these last couple of years, and recruit super well and are putting people in the pros now. Volleyball is doing more transformational work right now and showing the concept that you can come from another country and come play volleyball here and still be successful after the fact. Golf is pretty standard. You come play here, you go to the PGA Tour, Corn Ferry, whatever. And then for
live if you're Andy Ogletree for
boo! Sorry, okay, that's the end of my live rant. And then women's tennis. I mean, they all as a whole, we played a tough conference. You put them in another conference, and they would be. It would probably look better in record. Our record, I don't think shows how good this team is. So,
yeah, I mean, I think on that too, women's tennis and volleyball. Women's tennis kind of wound up right in that spot where we expected them to, and so did volleyball. Right? I don't think volleyball was necessarily a head and shoulders top 16 team this year. Nor do I think women's tennis was. And I think the fact that they both played into the second round and finished 17-32, that like T17 through 32, if you want to say ranking NCAA wise, is a perfectly accurate representation of both teams. And I think both of them would also be at the higher end of that. And they're two teams that just barely missed out on hosting. Maybe things break a little bit different, but it's that 15-25, 17-32 kind of, that back end of the top 25 is still good. But I think golf get number 2 in the country, even if they're not necessarily like the power ranking golf stat number 2 team in the country.
Right.
I think you got to give it just conference title. Golf is the only team that's won a conference title other than the Alvarado Fever Dream basketball season. Yeah, exactly. Which, oh my gosh, one of the most. Thinking about that team just
Fever Dream is an inspired choice of words considering what was going on at the time, but continue.
I didn't even think about that. Oh man.
And especially what happened immediately after that, but carry.
Oh god.
But think of it's Moses Wright's Fever Dream. Their golf is consistently the team that wins conference championships, and other like volleyball is a top 3 team in the conference, and it's pretty clear that those are the top 3, right? Women's tennis is in, to borrow an old Todd Stansburyism, a crowded neighborhood, the most crowded neighborhood in sports, or whatever he used to say, right? But I mean, they've got so many more trophies and things to show for what they're doing, especially this year. I've now beat the horse on something that was a slam dunk decision, so I'm eager to see how we'll spend 20 minutes talking about the male athlete of the year next.
You've produced a lot of glue that sticks well together with our next award, the Male Athlete of the Year award. Here are your candidates: Angelo Dispigna for baseball, Andres Martin, men's tennis, Jamir Gibson, men's track and field, Bartley Forrester, Christo Lamprecht, Ross Steelman, all for GT golf, Berke Saka, Batur Unlu, Mert Kilavuz for GT swim and dive, Jake DeLeo, Stephen Reid, Jackson Finley for baseball, and Carson Garrett for GT Survivor. Mr. Purdy, I have a feeling where you're going with this.
Hey, he finished 4th place in an international competition. I don't know what to tell you.
No, you
technically
said
correct is the
that
best
it's
kind of
only
correct.
Americans.
It's and Canadians, and Canadians, and Canadians, and Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes it a World Series.
Yeah, exactly. It's a World Series. No, don't worry about that one. That was he represented Tech well. I feel like he should have been at least included in the batch.
Hey, as somebody who was a non-athletic regular person, but on a club team that very much kind of had an attitude sometimes about that, I don't want to offend any of our vaunted scholarship award receivers.
He will not be winning this. Let's be clear. He's not winning this. I just wanted an excuse to put him in another category.
Hey, I mean, I just was throwing up anybody who was Turkish and on the swim team there for a minute, but
yeah.
Akshay, who do you want to lead?
This one was a very tough one. I put down Jamir Gibson because I think his I think we talked a couple of times this year about how his inclusion has sort of been a proof that the that Tech can sell itself in the transfer market, not necessarily in the top level revenue sports, but in these in the non-rev sports, in some of these sports like track and field, where it's, I mean, if you are a transfer, you basically have your pick of the litter in terms of programs, right? You're a lot of, and Jake, I think we've talked about before, especially if you're in like a swim or a track, like a more significant portion of the reason that you transfer ends up being the educational value rather than the NIL value or the pro value, right?
Yeah.
I think this proves that his success here as a transfer student proves out that model.
I think I'm going to agree with you here for just a second before I talk about my nominee or the person I would give this award to. And I want to agree. Honestly, the amount of people, swimmers or otherwise, like, man, like there's a lot of like smart athletes out there. A lot of times this is somebody saying it in the context of swimming, at least to me personally, but they're like, oh, like, why don't they just want to go to Georgia Tech? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't recruit athletes. I chose Georgia Tech because I could do not varsity swimming and still do a lot of swimming and get a great education. But I mean, Jamir Gibson is a perfect example. Just like you said, he's an engineer. He's a great athlete. And I think that gives me the perfect segue into how we were comparing him against somebody who's another perfect example of Georgia Tech mining the transfer portal for some great talent. And in this case, it's Ross Steelman out of my book. Just this past week, we were comparing the two of these guys as examples of again, Georgia Tech transfers, identifying talent that's already a little bit more mature, selling them on the experience and the fruits of Georgia Tech, be that your grades, your engineering, or Georgia Tech to PGA, Korn Ferry, and other professional golf success is very proven. I mean, there's a reason that Georgia Tech golf is what it is. I know that we've talked extensively last week about how Ross was the second best finisher in stroke play and darn well near won the individual title. And again, much like golf, I think that speaks more or less for itself and is a great example of, showing not just freshmen, not just people exiting high school, but there's much to be made about Georgia Tech not having success in the portal, or will Georgia Tech be able to have success? These are two great examples of us really finding, great diamonds and great additions to programs.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to our next award.
I haven't said a single part of this.
I haven't said a single.
I thought you were actually doing your.
No,
it's actually backing Carson here. I thought it wasn't a bit for a second.
No, I
said explicitly said he wasn't. I held off on my honorable mention, waiting for Jack's take, so I'm interested to hear what Jack has to say. He's a valued member of this podcast, Akshay.
If for me, it's come down to Steelman or Gibson. Gibson has a lot of cred for me because he set school records, which I think has to be a heavy weight in all of this. I'm forgetting which of the swimmers set any this year.
It's all three of the ones listed.
Oh, they all did? Okay, great.
Oh, yeah.
Just forget it. That was so long ago in my head. I just couldn't even remember what they did. But I like that Jamir is setting a record in a sport that we just haven't pushed the envelope in a long time, and I think that holds a lot of weight to me right now. And as maybe a bigger, what's the word of volleyball, needing to push the envelope of what can be push the avenues what can be possible when you come to Tech. And being able to come here, do your education, but you want to be really good at your very niche sport, come be very good at your niche sport. I also
especially with his Army tie too, just such a unique circumstance.
Yeah, I'm also gonna dock points on the swimmers for just not exactly having a great time at nationals. Across the board, I think you need to have a good performance when it matters most, and not during just a dual meet. You can have great dual meets, but when it matters, championships and stuff like that, or performance close to it, matter a lot to me, which gives Steelman a lot of credit too. So at the moment, I'm going to have my vote for Gibson, unless he just absolutely craps the bed at nationals, and it probably would flip to Steelman in that case.
I got two related things to that. One, that ties into my honorable mention of Andres Martin, who has been just a phenomenal and somewhat unsung player on a men's tennis team that maybe hasn't had quite the team success that I think all of us, for the last couple of years have been like, they're still really close to breaking through, but they just haven't gotten there as a team. That's 1 point in favor of Steelman for me. But I do want to put it, Andres, he lost in the first round of the singles or second, either way, earlier than we would have expected in that tournament. So to that end there, I just want to give a poll before we move on. And I think it speaks to not necessarily recency bias, but the profound effect that having end of the season success, i.e. NCAA success, specifically golf, swimming, track, we talk tennis, where there's these individual competitions. Would any of the three of us 3 weeks ago before ACC championships have put Ross Steelman at the top of our list for this?
No, probably not. We would have had to do some more digging on he's like just a highly ranking player and take that into account and whatnot. Like that's why Christo was top of mind for me because he won some tournaments for us this year. And then you look at the rankings and Steelman's like 60 places ahead of him. So and then he played some ridiculously good golf when it mattered. So. And Christo did.
That's the point. And they're big times at the end of the year. Yeah. So, but I just think it's interesting, right? Like he came up biggest on the biggest stage that you could possibly have for your sport. And I think that is a perfect example of all the stuff we were talking about.
For an entire athletic department lacking in big time chances to have big time performances when it matters most, it's going to hold a lot more weight than it's going to hold at a lot of other Power 5 schools.
I just thought it was interesting tying it all together. But
that's good.
Let's move on to the female athlete of the year. Your candidates are Julia Bergmann and Isabella D'Amico for the Georgia Tech volleyball team, Deniz Ertan from Georgia Tech swim, Carol Lee from women's tennis, and Emma Kauf from softball. Mr. Grant, you are up first.
Yeah, I think that there was a couple other names for tennis I could have considered, but Lee was head and shoulders above them. So I really just didn't make that list any longer than it needed to be. We talked about records. That's where Ertan came to mind for me as somebody who was just an absolute standout. And we talk about teams that need a little bit of oomph, a little bit of gas. The men's swimming and diving team's been a regular top 25 team as long as I can remember. The women, not really so much. And to see Deniz smoking it at ACCs was really something else. And of course, much ink and many words have been spilled about Julia Bergmann. But I went with Carol Lee. This is not a Lifetime Achievement Award. I chose Carol Lee. And again, we talked about her getting named for the second time, but including this year to the ITA All-Americans list. That matters a lot to me. I think she's been really consistent and is truly an anchor that they've built that team around. And I think that's probably one that's a little more unsung than, and potentially a controversial opinion when you're comparing her to one of the greatest players to ever do it for a team with a lot more smoke, if you will, in the form of volleyball. So I don't think you guys will agree with me, but Lee is my pick for that one.
Jack, I have a feeling both of us are going to have the same person. I will go first.
Okay.
Mine was Julia Bergmann. Mostly because, while this isn't a Lifetime Achievement Award, there were multiple times that Julia put an entire team of 7 players on her back. And we'll talk about a couple of those later down the line. But it's sort of it's a similar calculus to the 2011 NFL season. Peyton Manning should win MVP because the Colts sucked without him.
Is this the calculus? Is this the DiCaprio Best Actor for the Revenant Award? Except
I don't get the bit, but I'm sure it's the same thing.
I
metaphorically,
I watch a lot more Oscars.
Akshay not getting a bit? What?
You didn't watch the 2013 Oscars?
I'm very bad with media, but this is like Peyton Manning 2011. He should have won the MVP in 2011 because the team sucked without him. The Colts sucked without him. It's the same kind of. It's a more hypothetical version of that. It's like there were multiple situations in which this team looked like they were dead in the water, and then Julia Bergmann flipped the switch and single-handedly won games. So For that alone, I think that has to be appreciated.
She did that game 1 of the season against Ole Miss. Like, we looked terrible in our first set against Ole Miss. Like, that, I don't think I would call that our worst set. It might have been our worst set of the year. Certainly it's top 5 worst sets of the year.
It was pretty bad.
It was bad.
Pretty bad.
We looked rattled. We did not look ready to play. And then she was like, "All right, 31 kills today. We're just gonna do
against FSU too, didn't she?
Well, we'll get.
We were
to
down
FSU.
2-0.
We'll get to FSU. We at least got.
We'll
back.
Get there.
No spoilers.
We at least got through Ole Miss in 4 after losing that first set. But that was like, okay, tone set this year, and it was. I mean, that's as good of a first performance of like the first game we were gonna have. Carol,
for better or for worse, it set the tone.
It did. And then
no fault of Bergmann.
And her supporting cast, I think, on EJ, you'd probably be better at saying if it was better on if her supporting cast was better than Carol Lee's for tennis. I would go to say it was volleyball because we could go 9 deep against an average team pretty easily, 10 deep.
The thing is,
it's
so hard to evaluate.
Volleyball. I said, yeah.
I think we could go 9 deep in tennis, and it's only a 6-lady roster.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
I think they are. I think they're equivalent talent levels. Like if you just compare talent levels and the depth, like you said,
right.
But it's so hard to compare, like, the wins above replacement outside of the player that we're talking about when one is a team sport and one is an individual sport.
I'll note, Julia, while she's in tennis, you can kind of, how you want to sort your lines out. It's from 1 to 6 to see if you want to sneak in a win or let the best player just have a free one or something like that. Julia, every match had to deal with getting double or triple teamed. Even when we had very good outside hitters in Tamara Otene and Bertolino out there, she still was destroying the NCAA while drawing crazy defenses at the same time.
I'm really going to fight the since it's not on topic to comment on the other outside hitting because it was 1 and then a big gap and then 2-3.
It was a gap, but I would say because of Julia's ceiling, not because of the.
I would say because they were getting, like, she was being defended so well that they were getting funneled.
But you would expect
guys.
Bertolino and Otene to be able to take advantage of that, and I just maybe I'm spoiled from being a huge fan of Michaela Dowd and Mariana Brambilla and basically watching 300 volleyball matches with them on the flats. But I would have expected Bertolino and Otene to be able to step up with how much Bergmann was getting double.
I don't think it's just them.
Again, no fault of Bergmann.
Let's remember that Aaron Moss was getting 10 points a game pretty regularly. And Breland also had a couple ridiculously good nights. So, like, it didn't need to just, like, I think Otene and Bertolino's numbers are, like, Bertolino was playing a defensive game this year more than an offensive game, I would say. And then across the board, it wasn't just Otene that needed to step up. Like, we had 3 other girls that were ridiculously good to fill in that gap.
I want to break some news.
Yes.
So I was making a comment about the women's tennis being like a 9-person roster and they could be 9 deep. We knew that Rosie Garcia-Gross and Monica Dadaj were graduating as seniors, right?
Yes.
But Ava Roster is not on the roster for next year. So there's your breaking news. Anyways, back to your scheduled program. You heard it here from the Rumble seat. Anyways, back to arguing about volleyball. One of my favorite things. It's so fun. They're so good. I love that we can be this.
Yes. No, team. I think what's off the floor as well. What Julia has done for just the entire school and for the entire program of volleyball and creating a big old international pipeline that's something that Carol. I don't know enough about the ins and outs of tennis recruiting to know how that's gone. I've just talked with Michelle a lot about it. I've talked with Michelle Collier specifically. I've talked with Julia about it. I've picked up a sense that her and Mary Brambilla have done a lot to transform what the future of tech volleyball can be. And so when you stack on the individual stuff, 38 kills in a game, ties to the school record, has the 5th most kills in school history, ton of aces. Her serve receive is very good. I saw today she is like 4th or whatever in the Volleyball Nations League, which she's playing for Brazil right now. All across the board, it just has to be Julia for me.
I want to say one other thing, and I know this is not a lifetime achievement award, but never underestimate the power of just having an icon like of a team that people can rally around in a way that, like, Jose, if you went to any men's basketball game, you clicked with Jose Alvarado when he was on the team. Or when Justin Thomas was a quarterback of Georgia Tech football, it was, oh my gosh, that's Justin. And if you saw him on campus, it'd be like, wow, that's our quarterback. If you saw Jose, that's Jose Alvarado. Bergmann is perhaps the most of any of those put together, at least that I can,
in my time on campus, yeah.
And also on the internet.
Yes, the internet.
That's Julia Bergmann.
Julia Bergmann's stan culture is just
by far
a completely foreign concept to me.
Until May when she graduated, she was the most famous person on Tech's campus. So that wasn't like Angel Cabrera. That actually might be Carson Garrett now. He's getting close to 100,000 followers on Instagram. So
NIL deal win.
Oh, Julia had like 120 when she graduated. Call me later, goddamn.
Well, she's gone now, so.
Ooh, technicality.
I'm sorry.
I'm not over a check.
Let's move to something a little bit brighter. Let's talk about everyone's moment of the year. I think there were too many candidates for this one.
This is a hard one.
So I don't really want to read all of them out. So, Jack, what you got for me?
I'll say that the two that I think mattered most to me in terms of my calculus of individual performance. Actually, I'm going to say three. Bergmann's 38 kills against Florida State. Similarly to Ole Miss, we were down 2-0, had a reverse sweep. This also counts for like my game of the year as well. But her picking it up after down 2-0 on the road after losing to Miami 2 days before, and not possibly the worst spot Tech volleyball could have potentially been in. Like this, if we lost that match, the season was maybe going to slide badly. And she just figured it out. And she just destroyed kill after kill after kill. And then after the match said I wanted one more because she knew 38 was the school record and she needed one more to get it by herself, and she does not have it. She's got it shared right now. But that was just an incredibly good moment. Ross Steelman's putt on 17 against UNC to send us to help send us to the golf finals. That was a very hard putt that he nailed. That didn't put us away, but it was, in terms of like championship winning percentage odds or whatever, that vaulted it up pretty high.
On a very like emotional day for him.
Yes.
Well, emotional maybe not the right word, but a very like you have to put it together today after a very rough finish the day before.
And this one,
and losing the individual title.
My last one is not my pick, but I want to mention it as a huge sliding doors moment, and that is Josh Downs dropping the game-winning touchdown for North Carolina against Georgia Tech football. I, to this day, still...
Former Georgia Tech recruit Josh Downs, by the way.
I still hold to this day that if he catches that touchdown...
Oh, I forgot about that, Akshay. Frick.
I don't think Brent Key might... I think the odds of Brent Key becoming the head coach at Tech greatly change if that touchdown gets caught, because that's the fourth win of the season. That's a second ranked win. That's just that's a large variety of where that season, of what Key's resume could look like just in that one catch that he dropped. He was in he had a basket chance. No one was around him. That
was coming off of Miami and Virginia losses, but
yeah. So it was a huge pivotal moment for the team and therefore the school health as a whole, because it's football. My actual pick,
Did I not say that we weren't going to read all of these? And then you
told you three.
I told you three.
I told you the three I was considering, and it's oh Jesus Christ! I'm gonna give Steelman. The putt because of the championship win percentage odds that it gave Tech.
I'm gonna go next. I've decided. Thank you for deigning me that. I'm just going to come straight out with my moment of the year. That's the Zach Pyron Virginia Tech touchdown. You may recall Jeff Sims's tweeting this year about how Zach Pyron got that dog in him, which I believe he does. Yours truly is a much cursed sports fan. I have seen Georgia Tech play football road games in, I think, 6 different states-ish. Maybe, and that was the first road win that I'd seen in many attempts. So it sticks with me for that personal reason, and also because I think the kid played hard. He's got a lot of heart. I think between him and Haynes King, we're set up pretty well at the quarterback position next year. And the UNC game, yes, we won. Feels a little fluky. but like the Virginia Tech game felt like they pulled their britches up and they went, we're going to win this ball game come heck or high water. And they went and did it. And I think that's got to count for something. Between that, obviously emotional highs against UNC, against Duke, against Pitt. Like, yeah, we only won 5 games this year, but like I had feelings about Georgia Tech football that were positive and cathartic. And that's something more than I can say since, I don't know, it's been a minute. Maybe that UVA game in 2018. But so that's my moment of the year. I will give an honorable mention to Jackson Finley's walk-off grand slam against Auburn to win it in extras. And I was filling these out at the dinner table. Some other suggestions from my partner made it into the mix, but she said explicitly that she remembers exactly where she was when she heard that Jeff Collins had gotten fired, which is probably the only thing she can say that about for any Georgia Tech sports, because usually she's at the event. I think that is certainly a sentiment that may resonate with a certain sentiment of our segment of our fan base. So not to be a bit of a downer, but do want to put that one out there as well. I think much angst was released when that news became public.
I'm going to do a U-turn on what I had written down and go back to my original submission on our forum of Bergmann's 38 kill game. You already talked about it, Jack. I'm not going to belabor the point here, but we have to mention exactly, like, Tech was dead in the water, and like you said, that it, like I think we saw a couple of times in women's basketball, like one game that's an absolute stinker can really change the pace of the rest of the season, especially that late.
Yep.
And that was go time, and she carried them on her back to victory.
They did it.
So I'm not gonna argue that one. Let's head over to newcomer of the year. This could be a freshman athlete or transfer student. Some candidates for you: Angelo Dispigna for baseball, Deniz Ertan for swim, Cameron Swartz, women's basketball, Jamir Gibson, track and field, Jay Batt, athletic director, Javon Franklin, men's basketball. I will go first. I picked one for the men's side and one for the women's side because I thought that would make the most sense for me. On the men's side, it's Jay Batt, probably by a significant distance, honestly, just because of how much of an impact that he has already had and can have on the organization, and to not beat around the bush here, the fiscal health of the program. We could talk about that at length, and we have talked about that.
Listen to last week's Science of the Southland.
So go ahead and listen to last week's episode if you're more interested in that. On the women's side, I think Deniz Ertan is a great shout, but Alejandra Cruz is a really, really good one here for me because she played her way into the top half of the women's tennis lineup, which is not an easy thing to do. You have multiple top-ranked singles or like ranked singles players in that group, and like Jake was saying earlier, that they could roll a 9-woman deep lineup on the tennis court, and she was in the top 3 of that. So there's something to be said about the impact that she's had on that team and making it a lot deeper of a program this year as well. Mr. Grant, you're up next.
I think mine's pretty maybe not obvious, but certainly inarguable that he made a big impact as a newcomer. That's Hiroshi Tai. He won multiple events this year as an individual, and after committing to Tech, signing on the dotted line, then having to leave to serve 2 years in the Singapore military, and then coming back, I think he's got a great story to boot. He's going to be a big part of keeping this golf team performing where we've seen them and gotten used to over the last couple of years. Honorable mentions to all the people that have been named already. I think they were all on my list, particularly Dispigna, Ertan, and Gibson.
Mr. Purdy, you're last.
I agree with the Jay Batt sentiment that in terms of who, if one single person can change this total outlook of the athletic department as a whole, it's going to be him. And we've heard many positive we've seen positive signs of people coming back in the fold and just people just being more happier, and they have feelings of hope again, which is huge for just the entire school. And then on the athlete side, I got to go back to Jamir Gibson again because of records and stuff like that. I had forgotten about Hiroshi off the top of my head, so I think I haven't fully decided in my head between. On the athlete side, I think I'll give Jay Bat just like a.
You're supposed to decide before we recorded. Come on.
I'm sorry. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard.
That it's already decided.
Also, I want to shout out Tony Morgan because she's gonna change the outlook of women's basketball for a while too. So, no, I'm gonna go with Jamir because there's some serious upside still to go there, and hopefully can be a linchpin for just track and field as a whole and throw something else back in there on the athlete side, and then Jay Bat for the. I guess if we're gonna give a staff award, he gets just the general FTRS staff award.
Yeah.
Administrator award. Sorry.
Administrator award. Let's head over to best game or match. I'm just gonna call it best game. Again, a bunch of different candidates for this one, but I will let Mr. Grant cook here first since he has a large block of black text spoilered out on our document.
I think it's a pretty easy one for me. I know that I just rambled about Blacksburg for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes up in the podcast, but this one's going to the NCAA Golf Regionals. It's a tech program record result. This team's existed for like 120 years or something crazy like that. I know that formats have obviously changed a lot in that time, particularly in golf, also comparing modern scoring to current scoring, blah, 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 all those caveats. Anyways, it's hard to do program record level results. So I think men's golf gets the nod with that. They are, like I said, in my very first award, they are up and down this list for me. And they really had a tremendous year. Honorable mention to Georgia Tech men's basketball's win over number 12 Miami. Did not think that would happen, especially with like 2 minutes left in the game, but then they went on a 12-0 run to close it out. That was a lot of fun.
It was insane.
And I think it speaks to how much fun college basketball is when you're really clicking. And that was the best game they played all year. Baseball's walk-off win over Auburn. Football's win 5 days after firing Mr. Jeff Collins over the defending ACC champion Pitt on the road. I don't think any of us expected that, and that was a lot of unexpected fun, which gives it some sticking point. But I mean, it's the golf regional. I mean, it is just superlative in every single way.
Mr. Purdy.
In terms of entertainment value for me this year, it was Tech Volleyball's loss at Pitt. Well, it was a loss. It just in terms of just how well they played and how enticing of an entertainment product it was. That match had everything I would have wanted. That was when Breland Morissette had her career game as well with like 25 points or something like that. Like went off the chain. So she had a double and stuff. But no, the golf one that Jake mentioned I think is the obvious choice here in terms of what it meant for what was going to happen next. How incredibly good of a performance it was and how skilled they did. I mean, Connor, what was it? Lamprecht shot 10 under, like with a bogey-free 10 under round. What the hell? Like, that's ridiculous. That's some poor level stuff right there. So
just go crank that out at Tup Holmes right now, Jack. You got some sunlight left.
Yeah, a little bit. So we'll find out. But yeah, no. In terms of how much fun I had,
mean, it can be birdie free, but he might not get a ton of holes in.
No, it might be a birdie free single hole for all we know. So yeah, no, golf is my pick with honorable mentions to there's like 5 different volleyball games that were like that, but that's the at Pitt game I wanted to mention because they also played that at their big arena that wasn't in their volleyball arena, so they did the expanded crowd for that as well.
Jack, I'm gonna fight you just a little bit on the Pitt volleyball and the Louisville volleyball being on the list. Simply because we win a collective 0-4 against those two teams.
That's why I said entertainment value.
Just a little bit.
Entertainment value. That was the point.
The 5 setters were phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but man,
I also missed the home Louisville match, so I couldn't comment on that one.
That should have been a win, but we don't have to litigate that one again. That probably makes us a host too, man. The whole season they turn on single games and single sets, man.
That's why they play the games. They're not played on spreadsheets. But for me, I think this one I kind of split out into 2 in my mind. I think there was the most impactful, and then there was the most like you said, the entertainment value or the environment. I think for the environment one, it was the home pit game that was in McCamish Pavilion. I'm never going to get that right.
The pit game, yeah.
It was the home pit game. Just because it proves that model still works. I know that I think the one thing that we've said about volleyball is that they need to expand that arena. Like the fact that you can fit 1,200 people in that bandbox makes it an incredible atmosphere, but at the same time, you can only fit 1,200 people in it.
Yeah.
So I think one of the next steps for the program is going to be to expand the facility, and I think being able to I think the attendance was like something like 3,000.
3,400 people. Right? Yeah, 3,400 people.
Right. That proves that you can stick that many people in a similarly sized facility. It doesn't have to be 3,400, right? It can be 2,500. It can be double the size of what it is now, but it proves that you can still sell that many tickets and still have that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that the optics and the acoustics of McCamish Pavilion, especially with only half of a capacity crowd there, make it a little bit different. But the fact of the matter remains that it is a justification to expand the facility. Yeah. And I think that's important. In terms of impact, I'll go one step further than the NCAA golf regional. I'll go down to the semifinal. Right. We talked about the putt earlier. We talked about the putt at 17 for Steelman earlier. That entire weekend of match play golf was insanely stressful. And it's agonizing when all you have, especially if you don't get the Golf Channel or you're not in a place to watch the stream, it's just agonizing to only have the scorecast to go off. That was the position that I was in for most of the weekend, and following that and being on that ride. Obviously, they made it to the championship match, but didn't finish drill. But being on that ride and it was a lot of fun. It was fun to follow, even if it ended poorly. It was the most impactful point that they could be in, and they nailed the semifinal. The championship is whatever, but they nailed that moment. And I think there's something to be said for that. Let's move on to Coach of the Year. Mr. Purdy, you are up first.
It seems to be, of the people that have asked about this as well, it's been pretty universally Bruce Hepler, and I'd have to agree just in terms of getting the team together, keeping them focused, laser focused, especially after Steelman lost the individual national title, and taking down some good teams along the way, not backing down against North Carolina, who they never had to face directly at ACCs, or at the regionals or at ACCs, but certainly were the favorite in both. Or one of the heavy favorites compared to Tech. So that they have such a well-oiled machine over there. So it's got to be him. Honorable shout-out to Collier as well for doing the same thing with volleyball. But, yeah, it's Hepler for me.
Mr. Grant.
It's Hepler. I'm not going to, go around in circles on it. It's pretty clear. I just hope he wins his natty one of these days.
Agree. Mr. Grant. You have a couple of miscellaneous awards for us to pick over.
Yeah, I was just spitballing these. If you guys have any other things that you'd want to poke at or highlight, the first thing that came to mind for me was meme-erable moment of the year. Akshay, I think yours is better than mine, so I'll let you go first.
Does anyone remember? It was the UVA game, right? Does anyone remember Zach Gibson with time on the clock? Just deciding to run out of bounds as time expired versus Virginia with it was a 6-7 point deficit,
a touchdown.
Yes, they only had 20 seconds left.
A touchdown extends the game. That's all we needed.
That's
all we needed.
Just I think I sat in a friend's car and just after that game and drove away and drove to a cookout that's on North Side, and every couple of minutes I was just head in my hands was
I feel bad that he had to do the notes app apology afterwards too. It was that bad of a blunder.
He ran out of bounds.
It's bad. I know. I just feel bad that like it was so serious to the Notes app apology level, which does make it more memeable, I guess.
So I think
it's pretty bad.
Everyone, I think everyone blew it out of proportion on the media side, and I also fell victim to this. I'm not gonna make myself innocent at all here, but I think his response to that, and he took responsibility for it. Yes, it was a stupid decision. Yeah. He admitted as such, but he took responsibility for it, and he just kind of acted the way that you would want him to do in that scenario, right? Despite everyone being upset at it. So I think, despite it being a very low moment in a very low season at that point, there was some, there's some maturity shown by the person that made the mistake rather than everyone else around it.
Yeah.
So I have to give him credit for that. Mr. Grant, back over to you.
Yeah. Given that when I heard the news, I said the bad man is gone. I think the Jeff Collins one is up there for me. We all know it was, I think, probably the highest traffic week in the history of the website, and for probably good reason. So I'll leave that one there. I don't want to, again, beat a dead horse till it's blue. But anyways, moving on.
See, the bad man was gone, and then the Batman was in.
Yeah, and then the Todd Stansberry guy, who was just kind of like there raising money and stuff, he was also gone. But
seriously,
anyways.
No one Batman? Seriously, it's his Twitter handle. We're just gonna let that one sit.
GT Batman.
Insufferable.
In debt. Somewhere, Tony just hears like, "Ooh, debt? What?" That's a callback to last week's episode, everyone.
I do have
2 in a row.
Oh, Jack, do you have one?
I do have one. There was a volleyball game where I wrote about this, but I couldn't find the video. I don't think it ever got posted. Where Buzz was with the ball person, and he wanted to throw the ball down to the other side of the court, like you have to do to get the balls to where they're serving. And he messed it up, and it went behind the ref, and so he started running down the court, and then fell while trying to collect the ball. And then he dropped enough sweat from his suit that they had to stop the match and mop up the floor because Buzz was literally getting in the way of the match going. It was just a funny moment. But
while we're on the subject, was the glasses thing this year?
No, I was just about to say that was 2 years ago. That was on my way to the Notre Dame football game. I was on a flight when that happened. A shame.
Okay.
That was a great meme. That was really
That
fun.
was during a rivalry game too, wasn't it?
Pitt, but yeah.
Damn. I was about to set you up for a perfect segue.
Should we have put Buzz in Athlete of the Year for winning a national championship?
This one falls under the technically correct, but not allowed.
Yeah.
Anyways, I threw the next one on there as rivalry moment of the year. I think the men's basketball game was hilarious, kind of in hindsight, with how tight it was and how well contested it was, considering both teams were pretty bad. It was a great game. It was a really good game.
It was a great game, and one of the more emotional moments because that's not long after Brent got announced and he came on the court and did his speech and everything. So in terms of
he cut a promo.
It was a big promo week for the school in general, and I got a win to back it up at least and carry all that emotion forward. Can't say it exactly.
He cut a wrestling promo at mid-court. It was pretty funny.
It didn't exactly change the outlook of the season for the men's basketball team, sadly, but I mean, yeah, in terms of the games we played, I think that easily is the best case scenario, with I guess a slight honorable mention to softball beating Auburn at home on a walk-off by Reese Hunter, but that's all I can think of.
All right, Mr. Grant, last couple ones here.
Last couple ones, high-level takeaway from the year. I think this one we'll probably wind up doing full podcast episodes on in some.
We literally just did, I think.
This was the takeaway. These were the takeaways.
Yeah, my big thing is what will Bat do next? Maybe who will he fire? But I mean, he had a busy first year, and I think it'll be interesting to see as he gets to work in terms of how that translates to football and the new staffs that he and his subordinates are building. Football and basketball, baseball, along with a sport that Tech has dominated recruiting in, just not really translating on the field. I think there's a lot of storylines, and they'll hinge back into money and what comes next in terms of personnel decisions.
What comes next is a lot of debt. Let's be clear.
No, that's what comes now.
Yeah, that's a now and forever problem.
I think we talked about this on last week's episode, mention number 3. So go listen to that. But he was hired to fix a fiscal crisis, and that will define his tenure. How he fixes it or how he deals with it, maybe not fix it, but how he deals with it, so will sort of define his tenure. And that's really the only thing that I've been thinking about probably since October of last year is how does Georgia Tech dig themselves out of a fiscal hole over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. I got a couple other on there. I was just really spitballing to get a couple on the list. If you had a venue or atmosphere of the year, home or away, that stuck out. Mine that came to mind was McCamish for volleyball. I think we've talked enough about that. And I also had apparel or jersey highlight of the year as well. So you've got any thoughts on those? I
was a fan of the honeycomb pattern showing up on the volleyball uniform since the football team won't wear the honeycomb shells anymore. So I like that. The celebrating Black History jerseys were very good again for basketball.
Yep.
Baseball throws out their usual good ones.
For me, I think basketball's gray uniforms were terrible.
Correct.
I realize that this is a highlight.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I make that point.
They were terrible. Bad. Yeah, I did not understand why we spent money on those.
Hold on, no. Revisionist. Hold on. When I saw those on a women's basketball game and texted both of you about it, Jack was like, "They look great from up here." I want that.
Did I say that on
the record?
Did I say that?
Yes.
I'm a noted gray jersey hater, so I'm absolved here.
Okay, if I said that, I was wrong. If I understand myself well enough, maybe what I was hinting at was for a gray jersey, they looked fine. Because I generally also do not like gray jerseys and they're not one of our colors. So I'm like, why are we wearing this? We have enough other stuff to work with. So I think, in that sense, that's where I was going.
Another interesting thing is I think they wore basketball wore the basketball version of the technology honeycomb gray football jerseys from 2 seasons ago now. This year, that was another different gray jersey.
The men and women did not have the same gray jersey. That's right. Yeah, they had different grays.
Yeah, the women's one was just white Georgia Tech with a gray background, and I think navy trim, and it looked awful.
It wasn't great.
The men wore the Heroes Day, whatever they called the football one.
Yeah, the Children's Healthcare Atlanta one. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cho one. So some stylistic differences. If I remember correctly, softball had some adjustments to their jerseys. Softball and baseball got new sets of jerseys this year, if I remember correctly. Baseballs were I'm going to be a downer on all of this. Baseballs were a downgrade. I think softballs were same high level
pretty
quality.
Much the same. Yeah. Nothing I could really tell.
And I don't even remember football season, so I can't really comment there. Honestly, it was all in all, pretty fine year for uniforms. It's just there are a couple of real stinkers.
It wasn't the worst. The swim team still wears 5 different caps, but it's all personal opinions there. They just wear what they want.
Why are some of those yellow? This is not the time.
I have asked them about. I forgot where I wrote it. It's somewhere I interviewed them about this, but they just all have a story behind the cap they wear, basically. So some wear silver, some wear the right kind of gold, some wear white, some wear yellow.
And
Mr. Grant, is there an apparel company? Is there an apparel company that you think had a really good year?
I think they had a great year, and best of all, they don't sell anything yellow. It's all Tech gold, and that would be Section 103. Actually, I was out and about in the wild of city of Atlanta at a yet-to-be unnamed establishment that is in Piedmont Park and is very large on the corner of Monroe and 10th. You get where I'm going. Yesterday, and somebody complimented my Section 103 shirt. Which shirt? Of course, Welcome to the Thriller Dome, a classic, one of their best. And he asked me if I knew any other places to get fine Georgia Tech vintage apparel besides a company that he named. And I said, no, this is Section 103, and they do a great job. And I cannot speak highly enough for it. I'm in a Section 103 shirt right now. It's one of my other ones. I'm basically always in them, especially when I'm not, in my work business casual, business formal attire. They are soft, they are comfortable, they're in blue, they're in white, and they're in gold. Lots and lots of tech gold, and a great place to get not just the GT logo, but also fun other things like the Welcome to the Thriller Dome shirt. Truly a phenomenal year from them. Looking forward to seeing more from them. We've been tempted with polls, and we've been tempted with, if Georgia Tech golf would have won the Natty release and things like that. And I'm sure there's, as always, more in the pipeline. So go check them out at Section 103 on Twitter and section103.com on the internet. As always, free shipping over $70. And as a note, shipping will resume June 12th. So if you order something this week, it'll be to you sometime next.
Welcome back to Signs of the Southland for June 5th. Excuse me, not January 5th. Let's talk a little bit about the NCAA Track and Field Championships that we teased a little bit earlier. 2 Georgia Tech male athletes will be competing, Zach Jaeger and Jamir Gibson. Mr. Grant, this seems to be unprecedented, in your opinion.
What? The 2 people qualifying for a track championships from ye old Georgia Tech. It's not something that happens too much. We've had a couple twin qualifiers on the women's side in the past couple of years, but for the men, generally it's 1 or 0. So really great to see between the 2 of them. They've combined to qualify for 3 events. Gibson, as noted, in both the shot put and the discus. So I don't think we really stand a threat of being a team champion or anything like that, but it should be interesting just to see them get in the mix in a couple different days up at NCAAs.
Speaking of NCAA championships, let's finally discuss the NCAA men's golf final. It was very, very stressful. It was very, very tight the whole way through. Mr. Purdy, before we get into the scoring, the details, I just want your thoughts on the experience of the weekend.
I didn't watch as much of it as I would have wanted to, and I still watched a lot of it, which is saying something because I've never watched the NCAA Golf Championships before. I think once I started catching on and I was scoreboard watching those first couple rounds where it was individual play, and we were kind of close in there. We were leading after day 1. We shot even par. The course played pretty tough that first day. And then teams just started throwing Syracuse had a crazy good day, or Illinois had a crazy good day. A couple other schools just played out of their minds. And then Steelman, as we mentioned before, was killing it individually. Like he was shooting in the 60s every day. And then 3 bogeys in the final 3 holes and lost by 1. I wasn't watching those holes, so I don't, in the back of my head, just don't know instinctively if it was a putting issue or a driving or whatever issue. But we were so close, and that's the kind. I mean, it was a generic Atlanta fan moment to be leading at halftime and then not be winning at halftime at the final kind of thing.
Oh, buddy, they were leading at more than halftime.
They were leading.
On this one.
Yeah, they were leading by a lot. And then got slated with Pepperdine at the end, or in their quarterfinal match. Did plenty good there. I don't think there's much to elaborate on. Then it's Drew North Carolina, who was the beast that we had managed to avoid pretty much all year, who's just one of the bigger Titans in the ACC. We're as good of a Titan in the ACC as well, but they were 2nd ranked in the country. We were 11th going in. And they was back and forth, but they pretty soundly, it felt like it was a sound beating. Like that we played like a more confident team. Steelman came back, had his crazy good putt on 17, which is about almost 20 feet away, for a critical birdie on a hole that he laid up on, and that the North Carolina guy almost drove the green, and then Hiroshi Tai was able to close down 18. So at that point, I know you kind of got in my grill for being confident that I thought we had a decent shot at finals. But in terms of the most quality team we've had to possibly get the job done, this was that team. And Florida,
I'm just giving you a hard time, Jack.
Florida, and I forgot the guy's first name of the guy, but Biondi, who ended up beating Steelman in match and the stroke play, he was killing it in match play too. So like I think it was just two flaming hot teams, and just one team just was a little bit hotter, and I guess a blue flame does burn hotter. So, and that's what we face in the Gators.
Metaphors, I don't like them, Mr. Grant. Give me a metaphorless recap of your vibes from this weekend.
Honestly, the thing that this kept making me think about is how that 2020 team for golf is probably the greatest Georgia Tech team never to win a national championship. And I just kept thinking about Ogletree and Strapacci and Schneiderjins. And I just keep adding names to the list of teams that are so good, so quality, good guys. And they just, they're just a little short. Not to say that I didn't let myself be hopeful. I'd be lying if I said I didn't think we had a shot. But it's just tough, man. They played great golf. We said it, probably back in the fall. This team can play as good as any team on the planet, and they went up against Biondi, who was playing some unreal golf. In net, yes, Lamprecht was down 4 to Lynn, but it's a stroke here, it's a stroke there, and that's the difference, right? That's why they play the games, and that's why it made for great TV.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna, I've said this like 3 times this episode. I don't want to just keep talking circles on, oh, Steelman, he was so great until the last 4 holes, or oh man, they're runner up 5 times now, big sad. Because both of those things are tough, and they are sad. And it is agonizing how close these guys get to a title in a lot of years. But it really is a testament to the quality of the program from Bobby Jones on down. Really, it's always been a truly tremendous program. It's one that's the best in the ACC since we joined. Yes, we have the same number of titles as Wake, but they've been in the conference 30 years longer. Really, it's a testament to just recruiting well. They've been invested in with good facilities up at Noonan. All things considering they're in the middle of Midtown Atlanta, it's hard to have an on university or on institute golf course. So they make the most of that challenge.
They do.
And yeah, I think the thing I keep circling back to is it is so immensely hard and takes so many cameras to film golf. But I think we went out to the Godwin like 2 years ago and they had it all on TV. But match play in particular makes for such good golf viewing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so hard to have the resources and cameras to really do a quality production outside of some of the biggest events of the year, right? I mean, you got it for the ACCs and you got it for the NCAAs, but I don't know. I'd love for there to be like a fall, like ITA type equivalent or Grand Prix meet type equivalent where it's like, yes, it is an on-rev sport, but we got ITAs and we can live stream this, or
something.
Jake
like
just wants to feel alive during the fall in the golf schedule. He just wants to feel that existential stress of a championship final.
Jake, I have great
secrets to getting more buy-in from fans. Let them watch the good team.
I have great news for you. The Ryder Cup is this fall. You're going to have important fall golf to watch.
But I care about the logo.
Yes. I will note just
the logo is a flag this time, my guy.
It's fine. I will note that while we technically did lose 3-1 and Steelman's match didn't finish because it didn't have to, Tech was leading 3-1 at one point as much.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't when it mattered most, but there was a point where we were leading in 3 matches, tied in 1 and losing in 1, which was Lamprecht's. So like we weren't dead in the water until really close to the end.
They really were not dead in the water until probably 17.
Yeah.
Until Ty and Steelman came up on 17 because Forrester was still going on 20 holes. Let's go down the scoring real quick. You mentioned Lamprecht lost early. He was down 4 to Eugene Lin of Florida pretty early on. He had just a really horrible match play weekend. And there's not really much more to be said about that. That's just how it goes. Connor Howell lost by 1 to Florida's Dubois. Bartley Forrester beat Cress of Florida in 20 holes. So that set up a pretty climactic ending in the final 2 matches of the session between Fred Biondi, the individual champion, and Hiroshi Tai. And then Castillo of Florida, who sunk the game-winning or match-winning putt in extra holes for Florida versus Florida State in the semifinal versus Ross Steelman. Biondi got a really good shot up on 17. I think he was straight down the fairway. And Tai found himself in some or this is on 18, excuse me. Biondi was straight on the fairway. Tai found himself in some trouble off the tee in a bunker, and that kind of said it all, despite Tai actually making a really good shot to get himself on the green out of the bunker. It was a really, really well done shot. But Biondi was just closer when he was able to sink his putt to win the championship. So Castillo versus Steelman goes unfinished. I don't even think they teed off on 18. So
no, they didn't. No.
It is, and I think just to wrap up, I think just to echo what both of y'all have been saying, it is agonizing how close these guys get to a title most years that they are competing. But it is, it's valiant. It's like very valuable how consistently they get to this stage. And I don't think that should be diminished at all. Right? Like there's a value in being this close the whole time, even if this is loser talk at a certain level, but there's some value in being this close to the precipice, and it's just randomness at a certain level, whether you get over the hump or not. Right. So there's some, like, we still have to appreciate this kind of team and these kinds of performances when we have them.
Yeah, I'm making you play that round of golf no matter what. So
yeah, we're making you play golf. You're playing golf with us.
I do have to put on the table. I did bet playing the only round of golf that I will ever play in my life on winning this championship. I truly intend to weasel out of it, but I will do so unhappily.
We can start with Top Golf. We can start with Top Golf. No?
I've been to Top Golf. Top Golf is not fun to me, at least considering that I'm bad at
I play a decent amount of golf these days, and I don't think Top Golf is that fun. So right. I don't know about that. But no, we'll get him out there. The billboard that they paid for is great. It's good to see him up there. It's just disappointing, and not only sad or a bad disappointing. It's just like, man, a wistful disappointing. How's that? That's where I've been, at least.
It's like the Wolverine. It's the Wolverine meme, like the Wolverine holding the picture frame meme. It's that. What could have been.
And you say you don't get bits.
It was the one. We're not continuing this. We have to wrap up. I think that's about all the content that we have for today. That we'll have an update on the NCAA Track and Field Championships, but this is about it for the NCAA year for 2022-2023.
It is.
Jack, did we ever do your trivia question?
We'll do that next week. I forgot to mention, I'm at over a year now as a host of this podcast. I've crossed the threshold. So,
wow, that's it's been good to have you. I guess that you're like Danny Hall. We've gotten a lot more consistent since you've been here, and now you've been here for like 42% of the episodes we've done. So.
My goodness, we just keep.
I feel like comparing him to Danny Hall is a very.
I got a long way to go before I'm Danny Hall. Oh my god.
Oh, that's not the direction that I was going in that. Comparing him to Danny Hall is a road fraught with terror at this
point.
Jack
last led this podcast to the super podcasts in 2006,
Oh boy. Well.
Mr. Grant, for that, you get the privilege of taking us home.
Yes. For all of us here, Jack especially, congrats on 1 year. We really do mean that. For anyone that has any feedback for the three of us, though, you can email us at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. We put these podcasts up on our site, fromtherumbleseat.com as well. You can comment there. You can read all the other great stuff that comes out of our deep bench of writers that really do put a lot of heart and soul into all the things that they write. You can find us on Twitter at From the Rumble Seat or at FTRS blog. Wow. You can find us at From the Rumble Seat, though, but that's on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find me and Jack at JakeGrant98 and at Jack Nicholas, respectively, on Twitter as well. You can also find Section 103 on Twitter, as we mentioned. That's at Section 103 or section103.com. Please rate, review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, comment, whatever on the podcast platform of your choice. Tell your friends. We really do appreciate it, and we grow because of great support from listeners like you. As always, it's been a great week. We will talk to you next week. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.